Yep, I just saw it myself at 6 o'clock. Are we all ready? Good evening and welcome to the Cuyahoga Heights Board of Education work session meeting on February 12th, 2025 at 6 p.m. in the Bonneray Media Center. Will the treasurer please call the roll?
Mrs. Zetter.
Here.
Ms. Prouse.
Here.
Mrs. Decker.
Here.
Mr. Sachaki.
Here. 4 present, 1 absent. Mr. Dobbins is on family vacation in Disneyland, or Disney World rather, with the grandchildren and so on. So we need to excuse him for tonight, and of course we will do that. And he was sorry he couldn't be here, but some things do come before board meetings. At this point, on behalf of the board, I would like to welcome all students, staff, parents, and interested community members to tonight's Board of Education meeting. Board values and encourages public comment on education issues. Anyone having an interest in the actions of the board may participate during that portion of the meeting. A copy of the board meeting agenda is available on the website. And at this point, we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Section 2, approval of agendas. And next, I have one item that needs to be added to the agenda. Under 16.b, approval for board attendance at meetings. Would like to add the impact of the K-12 policy presentation being given by the ESC on February the 28th. And 2 board members will be attending, myself and Mr. Dobbins.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I sent that invitation. The ESC had asked that I send the invitation to the board president, and so I did that, and they're hoping for all 3 mayors, which I sent an invitation to them as well. Village council presidents, which I haven't sent that yet, but then board members, so we can add that.
And I've discussed with Ms. Decker about the possibility of whether it should be the vice president or Mr. Dobbins because of his involvement with state issues over the last 8 or 10 years, and we felt that Mr. Dobbins would work out well as the other rep.
And if Mrs. Decker wants to go as well, I will ask for a 3rd person. I don't think they're going to turn anybody away because it is kind of at the grassroots phase of things. They're just not listening to superintendents at the state level anymore, and we need to have our local elected officials start to hear some of the information as well. So if anybody else is interested, I can reach out to Jen Dodd over to ESC and see if I can get an additional seat. So just let me know.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, any other items for the agenda? Okay, I'll accept a motion for the approval of the agenda as modified.
So moved?
Moved by Ms. Decker,
Second?
second by Ms. Etter. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, treasurer, please call the roll.
Mrs. Decker.
Aye.
Mrs. Zetter.
Aye.
Ms. Prouse.
Aye.
Mr. Sachaki.
Aye, motion passes 4-0. Next section would be comments from the public. We have no other people here, so we'll move on to section 4, presentations. I'll turn it over to our superintendent, who can turn it over to our presenter.
Thank you. So, as you know, there are a couple items on the board agenda tonight related to our Hillside project. GPD has been facilitating that process. Jason Nolde has been running point, kind of out in front, with working closely with the school district. He's away, but that's okay. We've got Nate Gotlabowski coming in from GPD. He's an engineer. He kind of entered the process with us when we got to the pre-bidding meeting held right here in the professional development room, and has continued to walk alongside us with this project. So he could be a good person to just talk about what the process is so far, kind of what comes next, and if you have some engineering or some that level of specification questions, it's a time for you to ask that of him as well. Okay, so
Right.
Nate, go right ahead.
So this project was prompted based on a geotechnical engineering report that was originally done for the school for some of the auditorium and middle school building, where the hillside on the back had some slip issues. It wasn't necessarily slipping, but the factor of safety for the hillside was insufficient for what it was designed for. So what we have done was we made some recommendations based on that original report to remediate the hill by adding a plate pile system to give the hillside some stabilization. This set of plans is that to implement that system for you guys, to give the hillside a factor of safety that is sufficient for what we deem as safe. I can go through the plans a little bit here. It's on the back of the hill. There's an auditorium building and the middle school along the track. There is 2 areas where the existing buildings bump out closer to the track, and those are the actual areas that are in concern. And our set of plans show the remediation of these areas and work that will need to be done. We have gone through the bidding process for this, and I think we received 4 bids, ranked 4 bids. And Rulin is the one that we are recommending to accept acceptance for, and that's where we are today now.
Now, did Rulon come in as the lowest bid or the best bid?
In our opinion, the lowest and probably the best.
Yeah, in our policy, we have language that says the lowest and most responsive bidder, and they fulfilled all the obligations. When you met with, we maybe had 7 or 8 groups that were here that day, and a couple others had inquired that were not present. In fact, I think we had 2 submissions that did not come to our pre-bid meeting, correct?
Yeah,
And they went through all of the paperwork that needed to be completed. They talked about specifications. If you want to talk more about the specs that were in there, I mean, we went everything from when the project was expected to start, the type of bonding that they would have to have.
right.
Go ahead.
And Nate, I wanted to add to the bidding, so we did have 4. So Rulon came in at the lowest of a combined approximately 400,000. The next one was Maddox at approximately 475,000. The next one, DRS, came in approximately at 520,000. And Fabrizi came in highest of the 4 at approximately 790,000. And David?
Okay.
But
Yeah.
I think the point that we're making is to make sure that all the requirements are being fulfilled, that this vendor does have enough background that you feel confident in
Yeah.
their ability to do the job. Perhaps you've even worked with them before, or certainly checked references and so on.
That was
Yeah.
going to be my
I think
question.
that's kind of what Maria was going for.
That was going to be my next question. I mean, what relationship or experience has GPD had with this company, Rulon? Have you worked with any other projects with them?
My project manager, Jason Oldie, could speak more to that, but yes, he has. They are the most familiar with the plate pile system that is going to be installed for your guys', the main portion of what you guys have is,
Okay.
they are the most familiar from what we see from the other bidders.
Okay. And because I really have little knowledge in this area at all, are they an engineering company? Are they a construction company? Are they?
Construction.
Construction, okay.
Did you give the companies their geotechnical report?
Yes.
Okay. Did you talk about the water issues around around the pool area with them, or?
Yes, so the system that we specified took into account to be a nonlinear, and so water can pass through the system. So the water issues will not affect the system that we're installing and should not impact the longevity or design.
In the time frame that we're looking at here, kind of really interested in getting this done soon and in a timely fashion so it doesn't affect some of the activities that go on in that area, our summer activities and then also when school starts. do they look to be timely?
Yes.
Workers?
Yes, we have been upfront with them about the timing that it starts when school closes and needs to be done before school opens, and they have been, they have ensured us that that will happen.
You know, part of the pre-bid process was defining that timeline, stating that it had to start June 9th, which is the Monday after school is out. And GPD had estimated a 55-day project, of which they felt they could come in at or under that timeline. In our preliminary meetings, we asked about the use of our facilities for athletic purposes, and they seemed to, again, preliminarily think that once work was done during the day, that our fields would be available for use. So we would not have to relocate. However, we would have to move to evening hours if they want to continue to do some of the same types of things. Now, that could change. Nate, if the board approves our progress moving forward, what's the next phase? We will have another pre-construction meeting with them. That's correct?
Correct. So we'll have a pre-construction meeting a few weeks before they start. I thought we had it written in here. And then we'll go over all the requirements, so just more of a formality, so everybody's on the same page, so no mistakes are made or anything.
Another specification would be that they would meet with us weekly to give us weekly updates on progress. I believe that was part of the conversation we had with Rulon 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, they'll meet with us weekly, bi-weekly. They were pretty much open to whatever is needed for the meetings.
And I want to ask one other question, and that had to do with price, because if I remember correctly, looking at those bids, those quotes, there was the first line, and then I think, which was around 394,000, you know, round up to 400. There was a second line beneath it, was like 8,000 more or something like that? What
Yeah.
is that?
That is an alternate. So we put in our documents for a gate that if you choose to accept it, that's how much money they will charge to install a gate. Because they're going to access the hillside by taking out some of the fencing on by the auditorium over here. And instead of putting just the regular fabric back up, it was suggested by the school that a gate might be beneficial for the school to go access that area. So we put in an alternate in for, if it is accepted for you guys, you could spend that money and have a gate there.
I didn't realize it was actually for an additional
Mhm.
piece of equipment
Yep.
or a structure.
Yep.
Yeah, right as you go underneath the bridge between the two buildings, that's the section of fencing they will start to take out. You're essentially going to be taking out the slope and rebuilding the slope, but depending on how much they rebuild the slope, you know, if it's accessible, if a gate is there, we're able to access, let's say, to just cut grass, you know, that could be a convenient location. But if the slope is too steep and we're not able to, you know, rebuild to, you know, an acceptable grade, then we wouldn't put in a gate. We would just put up the old fencing. So.
We consulted with Mr. Zavola and the rest of our maintenance crew, you know, just access to the hillside is easier that way from our location, and also allows us to dump snow. When we get big snows, sometimes we have an issue with piles being too large, so it gives us the access to dump some stuff with the loader over the side of the hill as well, so
Okay.
gives a little relief to some of that.
And one final question. You know me, I'm always about money. So we approve this tonight, and this is the amount. Is there a possibility that they come back to us for more, asking for more?
Change
There sh-
order.
There should be no escalation in price unless there was something additional that they need to do in our plans. So, no. They should not do anything additional than what is specified in our plan.
Okay.
And then, Nate, I just had a question too, I need to touch base on it, and this is just kind of to get on the record. So, in the areas that we have out there, the safety factor currently sits at, do you know
believe it was in the 1.1 to 1.2 range.
Gotcha.
And we're increasing it to a 1.5 for long-term, a 1.3 short-term, 1.5 long-term.
Which is in line with industry standards for safety factor
Yes.
numbers. Okay.
So what assurances do we get for the future? I guess what, is there a warranty or a,
I believe for the plate pile system, they had a 1-year warranty.
That's on just the construction and installation.
Right.
Dell Channels, you work with him, he's your geotech.
Yeah, or geo. Yep.
He seemed to make me believe that these could last 30 years without any problem, because they're used in highway construction all the time.
Correct. Yep. Dell can speak more to that, but yes.
Okay, and if I heard correctly, both GPD and our administration will have weekly touch base for better description. I mean, maybe that's not exactly the protocol, but to keep track of making sure that everything is happening as planned and on schedule.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Just want to make sure I heard that.
Yeah, like I said, about 3 weeks prior, we're going to have a more thorough meeting. I think it's 3 weeks to a month before. We'll pull our athletic director in to make sure that anything that needs to be accommodated with athletics is taken care of. We know summer school doesn't start till August. That'll be fine. We have to close off the elementary parking lot in the back and our parking lot in the back here. So we'll make sure that all those plans are in place prior to school letting out.
Will GPD have, I don't know if this is the correct term, like a project manager on site during this construction?
We will not, but we will have geotech inspections. So our geotechnical engineering people will be out here at certain periods of time to inspect the installation and make sure it's done correctly.
Okay.
did Ruin or the other bidders have any recommendations beyond the design they were given to enhance the design, or were they, I know you said they
I
were
don't-
the best, but,
I don't
Was there a
believe so.
reason? okay. They stuck to the design as is?
Yeah.
They made me to believe they feel pretty comfortable with this project. I think they even have their own equipment that allows them to do it, whereas the other, part of the reason why I think some of the other, and again, I may not be accurate on this, but seem to recall that they did not have the equipment. They may have to rent the equipment to bring it in. Whereas this is a pretty standard type of thing for
Right.
Ruland. And I think a couple groups didn't throw their, in fact, I spoke to somebody, they didn't put their bid in because they said, we don't have the equipment, and we know a company out there does, and I'm assuming that's Ruland. They've been around for 100 years, I think.
Yeah. They've been around.
I've been passing their trucks for 30 years in education on the road, so they're,
Their bid also included the design of the system as well. So they had opportunities to move it around and change it a little bit. That's what their bid includes.
Oh, so this design is theirs that we're seeing, or
Our
the
design
plans?
is to show the remediation of the area. Their design is going to be for the plate piles of where they're placed.
Okay.
We tell them that they need to be placed in a certain area. The configuration is up to them, though.
Okay, well, we have an item on the agenda, 12H, to the approval for this tonight. I guess that's correct. But we've got some other things in between now and then to talk about, so that's why I'm not suggesting we move it up, because I know the treasurer has a few things he wants to say.
yeah, and I,
Wants to say during his
and I
presentation.
do know right before this, we got an email from our legal team about the contract that we'll be talking about later, and everything seems to be pretty in line and standard, with no modifications based on what
Okay.
we had already preliminary done, so everything is checking out
Okay.
so far.
Okay, do
discuss
you have
more.
any other questions for GPD representative?
Okay,
All
thank
right.
you.
Thanks for your time, Nate.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you coming out.
Stay around for the vote if you want. But we We will not be.
You're welcome to stay, but it's gonna be a while before we get there.
It'll be a
That's
few
why I brought
minutes.
that up, so.
Leave before the policy's out.
Well, it's before then. Fortunately, it's before then.
Okay, moving on to section 5, treasurer's business, Mr. Muccio.
Thank you. I ask for motions 5A, 6A through 6F for approval tonight in the consent agenda.
Moved by Ms. Proust,
I'll second.
second by Ms. Decker. Is there any, I'll turn it over to you, Matt.
Yep. For 6A, we have our normal bank reconciliation, financial reports, and payments for board review for the month of December 2024. We're right on target for our 5-year forecast and where we thought we'd be. 6B, purchase orders over 5,000. We have our lead sheet there. We have 4 for tonight. First one is CDWG. That's for 30 laptops for teachers for instruction at a cost of $20,493. We have our second one, and I have pictures of this second one too, so after I go through all 4, we can go back and look at the picture for that one. That's going to be for Champion Roofing, and that's to replace the gutter at the high school. 2 new gutters on the front side at the high school, 85 feet per section. Comes to a total of $15,750. Number 3, Champion Roofing. That's to replace gutters at the elementary school. 2 new gutters on the front of the elementary school, 80 feet per section. That comes in at $8,350. And number 4 is Dalton Combustion System. This is additional labor required for piping and wiring. The new pumps, the emergency fix that we had, which was the condensate pump and vacuum pump, due to unforeseen corrosion with the existing piping at the high school. And that's $6,665. If we go to T3B, Champion Roofing, there's going to be 6 items in that PDF, but if we go all the way to the end, that's the picture we have of the gutter at the front of the high school. Now, how they climbed up there, I don't know, but
I think an important
they got that picture.
important piece of this is that those gutters, they don't run down a downspout like you have at your house. They actually run into the building before they go to a downspout. So the fact that anytime you have any type of, a lot of the pieces of slate will get stuck in there. You may also get leaves and just general dust and debris. And when that clogs up, I know like at the elementary school, there's one 3rd grade classroom over there that the ceiling tiles fall out every single time and we have to bring in dehumidifiers and make sure we mitigate any risk. And did you want to add anything,
Yeah,
George? 'Cause I know you've
so
worked
that
on
is
this.
taken from the flat part of the roof, zoomed in, because I've been up there with Jim to kind of inspect and him show things both on the inside and outside. And basically, to the front of that, the new gutters will be placed. They'll be, aesthetically colored so they blend in with the building. But getting the water away from the building and then draining it properly at the bottom is going to really help a lot of the issues that we've seen over the last 10 years since I've been here.
Well, the north gym, you can easily walk in and see the result of water.
I have never heard of a
Yes.
gutters, water coming into a building.
And these are original gutters too.
Correct.
So
Yep.
when the building was first built, all those years ago, those are the original gutters.
And it's such a good idea over at this building, they decided to replicate it at the elementary school when they built that.
They last.
It lasted.
80 years.
So replacements, around time for that.
I assume there's a reason, the elementary school, something must be different because the scope of the work is about the same number of sections and distance, but the price is very different. So is there something different about doing the high school building?
I think the span is a little bit larger at the high school building. I know it might have said that on there.
80 feet,
It does-
isn't it?
85 versus 80 feet, so there isn't a whole lot of
Yeah.
difference.
Well, I
They're
think there are
both two.
there are 2 sections at the high school. I think there's only one. Oh no, it says 2 new gutters
It
on the
says
front,
it on the
80 feet
elementary
per
also,
section.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be my only question, is why is there such a price difference? There might be perfectly valid, I just didn't understand why it was so different.
Well, if we compare both real quick, I have them up on my screen. So, identical, but yeah, the elementary school's coming in.
I guess going over the 80-foot mark is the
Threshold.
bad.
I can get more information for you. I can ask
Yeah.
Mr. Zerbola, and he can provide it for me. I'll put that in my Friday update.
I wonder if there's the sections of the gutter come in, But then you may have to cut it.
It's a newer building. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons why it could be different. It just jumps
I'll ask.
out at me that it's almost twice as much and it's for essentially the same length, so.
Item 6C, donations, we have two. Look at our lead sheet. The first one is an anonymous donation, and that's for high school art materials and supplies to the tune of $1,000 from an anonymous donor. And the second donation is from Gabe's Restaurant in Old Brooklyn, and that's to help offset the lunch debt of children in need. And that is $425 raised, donated for them.
Can I ask how that came about? Because Gabe's also provides
Oh, yeah.
refreshments for the men's service club in Brooklyn Heights for
Yeah.
their meetings.
Wendy Jesnowski, who works in our cafeteria, I believe she also works at that restaurant, or she has a family member, a friend that works at that restaurant. And the employees there grouped up and decided they wanted to donate to help offset some of, student lunch debt that is existing. So that was what I was told for that one.
From their tips, wasn't it? Or something
Could have
like
been.
that?
I don't know that for sure, but
No.
could have been.
Nice.
But I do know that the
It's a beautiful
connection is an
gesture.
employee that we have here who either works there or has a connection that does work there for that donation, so.
However it came about, it's a very generous gesture.
Yes,
And it's very much appreciated,
We have
as well as the anonymous $1,000 donation is a very generous gesture as well, and quite appreciated.
We thank those, and we have our thank you letter attached too, that we send out to all our donations that we receive, so. Item 6D, permanent appropriations, we're modifying. So we're increasing in Fund 300-9300, which is the Athletic Facilities Master Plan Fund, to the tune of $404,000 rounded, and that's to cover the Hillside Stabilization Project. So I rounded up, I think it came in at $403,490 some dollars, so that's appropriation. And again, we're using that account, which has an existing balance of $1,198,500 some dollars. And when we do use that $403,493 against it, we're gonna end up with a $795,000 ending balance. And again, that's the revenue stream for that account's the billboard. So we know we are getting more billboard money in addition to when we renewed the contract. Plus, they're looking to set up very, very soon the second digital billboard, which is going to bring in more revenue that we have, so.
So in essence, the billboards are gonna end up paying for the Hillside project.
Yes, as well as their original intent, which was the turf field and the track to that extent. But yes. New vendors, we just have two. One is Rebel Panda Productions, that's for DJ services for school dances. Estimated amount of about $800 per year. And then the Rulin Company, we're adding that vendor too for the Hillside Stabilization Project. And our last item for approval is a then and now certificate for Dalton Combustion, which we were talking about, that additional labor that we have for that corrosion.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, treasurer, please call the roll.
Ms. Prowse?
Aye.
Mrs. Decker?
Aye.
Mrs. Etter?
Aye.
Mr. Suchaki?
Aye, motion passes 4-0. Section 8, treasurer's discussion and comment.
Yep, just three items, and I'll go quickly through these. First one is the tentative timeline for the Hillside Stabilization Project. So back in September 4th, we had a board meeting. We approved GPD for architectural and engineering services for the Hillside project. And then the week, actually, after that, in December 11th, we authorized solicitation of bids to obtain competitive bids for the Hillside Stabilization Project. So the week of December 23rd, we advertised for that week. Then the next week, December 30th, that's the second consecutive week. And then January 6th, that would be the third consecutive week that we advertised. Tuesday, January 7th, we had the pre-bid meeting here, 3 o'clock. We walked the site. Matt, that was very, very cold that day.
Very cold.
Yeah. we
Not
were
as
outside.
cold as the 2 days we had off. though.
No. But Rulin participated in that walkthrough that we had. We opened the bids Friday, January 17th at 1 o'clock. Matt, you were there too. And then Wednesday, February 12th, which is today, the Board of Education anticipates to approve it in Matt's section, and they are the lowest responsible and responsive bidder and recommended by GPD. And then the construction's anticipated to begin in June, July, at that time period, and close out 55 days later in August 2025. Item B, yesterday, Tuesday, Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost announced $11 million in safety grants being offered for Ohio schools and districts in the form of grants. And we can apply for a share of that $11 million. It's on a first-come, first-served basis, so making prompt submission of applications is a key consideration. No applications will be considered after May 30th, 2025. We plan to submit our application, knock on wood, next week.
Wow.
So we want to get in very soon. Get to the front.
Yeah,
So did you and Matt want to talk about
We're
that?
super fortunate. Mr. Hartman's put a lot of legwork into this. We know that we typically have grants available, so he's been meeting with vendors and getting quotes all throughout the year, evaluating them and going back. He's actually going to meet with the lowest estimate that we'd received again on Friday to get a new estimate updated for the timeline, and then we get a finish putting the application for the grant. He's already started off the process. We just got to tweak a couple things, but he did a great job, really, just putting a lot of time and effort.
The
into it.
intent would be to upgrade our
PA system.
PA
yes. So our
system
PA system in the high
in
school,
the middle school, high school.
are, we don't even know the age, but they're old. They run on, and so it's new units and speakers and a lot more features that really align with our safety plan, and will increase communication. Again, like he's really kind of got into the details with that. And when we get closer to approving that, he could give a little mini presentation to you guys on, what that consists of and what it's going to look like. But like I said, it brings us up to 2025.
It's a need
and
that
beyond.
it's something we need to get fixed soon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
safety, security, because, if we have any type of communications that we need to get out to staff.
Like a
It
lockdown.
allows us to do that, lockdowns, any other type of information getting out. Even just our regular communications to the school right now, there's certain areas that are dead spaces where there is no communication to. It'll allow somebody in the office to go right into one classroom only, if need be, to give directions to one classroom. So there's a lot more capabilities of it, as well as the ability to expand upon the system in the future if there's other things that we want to do. Because our current system is pretty old if you ever want to see it. Our elementary one works great, it's wonderful. Our one in high school, middle school is past end of life.
Now, just to clarify, because he said that there are some dead spaces, we increased, again, through another safety grant last year, the number of two-way radios that we have. So in those dead spaces, our teachers do have radios so that we can still communicate. So it's not like we can't communicate with people, but this allows us to communicate in a singular way as opposed to using two different methods of communication.
Because right now, like our process is, we make a communication over the speakers, then we go to channel 1 on the radio, then we go to channel 2 on the radio. So we have a process that works and that everybody's aware of. But again, this is more immediate to everybody. Again, this ties to another project that he did this year. We had, I think, 30-plus radios that were old radios that he had got reprogrammed. For now, a large cost per unit that you guys previously approved, and we've deployed those. So there are a lot more locations now, so our communications improved, but this is the next level of what we need to be doing just to make sure that we're as safe as we could be and have, open lines of communication with our staff.
This sounds great. When I first heard of this, when you said safety grant, the first thing that came to my mind is, what about still our fire alarm system that is in need of enhancing as well?
Yeah, we're going through that process, and it's, when you look at the allowable areas, so they give you a list of areas where it meets those concerns, and
This safety grant would be applicable for? is what you're
Yeah, they
saying?
get
Right.
allowable uses.
Okay, allowable.
And it might be one way to potentially stretch it to do that, but this is something that needs to be done. So even as we've talked about projects that need to be accelerated on our list of things to do, this was one of those items where if this grant wasn't available this year, we would probably have been in discussion of like, this is a project that we want to move forward with.
And there is a
because
max amount you can apply for, which is how much?
$40,000?
$40,000, so
I
it,
get you.
yeah.
All righty. You know me, just.
No, it's a good question.
That's a good point.
It's a good question,
see if
and
we can
that,
Squeeze something else out of the state,
Yeah.
that's all.
that 40,000 would fit nicely with the numbers Mr. Hartman has been able to bring to us.
And we'll be submitting this as a team soon. Normally, I'm accuracy over speed, but since they're saying it's a first come, first served basis, we just want to make sure we're to the head of the line. So,
That's how we got our 4 school buses,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So we're gonna expedite this one.
Did it once, we trust
Do
you
it
to do it
again.
again.
We can do it again.
Try,
That's
try.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And then the last item is just the timeline for the fire alarm security system that we had. So back at the September 25th board meeting, we approved a resolution of urgent necessity to replace that fire and security system. Also during that September 25th Board of Education meeting, the board approved GPD for architectural and engineering design services for that. The Board of Education can deviate from competitive bidding procedures in cases of urgent necessity or for the security and protection of school property. So actually both apply for this urgent necessities, past that, as well as this project is for the security and protection of school property. So October 17th, that was a Thursday, we had our review meeting with GPD. Then Wednesday, November 27th, GPD completed draft documents. There's a lot of in-between stuff, but I just try to highlight the big dates that we had. They completed draft document plans for the fire alarm and security upgrades. Friday, January 17th, GPD had completed the project specification document, which is 203 pages, as well as drawing documents, 19 pages. Monday, January 20th, GPD sent out invites to 7 firms for proposals for the fire alarm and security upgrades. If we look down in the administrative content, I have the 7 in red that were invited. January 23rd, which was a Thursday, we walked the site at 1:30 with interested vendors. So that was GPD, school officials, as well as vendors. Then on Monday, February 3rd, GPD sent out an addendum number 1, for any questions that came in on their specification document, as well as the answers to those questions. Friday, February 7th, which was last Friday, we opened the proposals. They were due at 1 o'clock. We only received one proposal. And we heard from one vendor, and they asked if we would accept a late proposal. We said yes. And on Tuesday, February 11th, yesterday, that one late proposal was received. And then we're tentatively looking to board approve a contract at our first March board meeting for the fire alarm and security system. And that's anticipated to be a 275-day project. We begin in March of 2025.
Well, GPD needs to do the same process they did with the Hillside. They need to put both proposals through a rubric and a process. And you know, just like we had one clearly with our Hillside that was outside of the parameters of what was necessary, you'll see in the administrative content here, and we won't go too deeply into this.
Yeah, I don't want to.
There's a little bit of a discrepancy between the two, but
Yeah.
that has to be vetted by GPD.
Right, so Einheit was the one proposal that we received, our local company in Brooklyn Heights, and we see that amount there in red. And then the vendor who turned in their proposal late, we see that amount in red as well. However, we need to discuss the proposal with GPD. It appears items are missing and could be incomplete from their proposal. So we're going to sit with GPD and go through both, like Matt's saying.
We have an objective process that
Yep.
we'll go through and
Yep.
see if one is off or
Big difference in price.
there is a difference.
But it could be they don't fully understand
The scope of the
technical
project.
aspect, the scope of the project.
They never came out to walk the site. And I think they missed some information that was requested. But that's not for us to determine alone. We'll go through that with GPD.
Okay.
If you decide that it seems like they're missing stuff, do you have to give them the opportunity to go back, or we kind of
We can discuss it.
move on?
But we have the hard part is we have a valid, complete proposal that we had asked for.
Yeah.
So the whole process is to make sure that you get the right thing,
Yeah.
by the right time. So we put out there that the time is, February February 7th, due by 1 o'clock. GPD works on the specifications and the drawings. It's very involved, if you were to take a look at it, very involved. So, and then we invite, vendors out to walk the site to say, hey, let's put eyes on exactly what's in that documentation to see. But to give enough time for those firms to go back and sit down and spend quality time to complete the application. And we have a pre-bid meeting actually in this room that Jason Nolde goes through, and he had some additional people with him from his office, just to go over the pre-bid meeting specs. So it's a 4-page long document that he just spends about a half hour going through. These are everything that's going to be needed, and then if there are any questions, he issues an addendum if needed, and then we walk the site and actually point and look at stuff as we go. So the whole process is designed to make sure people understand, this is everything needed for it. Don't forget something, ask as many questions as you want.
Right. And
But
he
it's by
didn't
this
do
date.
that.
So you don't want to lose the valid existing bid to give,
Yeah.
an incomplete one, which they, it was late, it was probably wrong. And, you want to give more time and then lose that valid one as you go. So
Makes sense.
that's the, but at first look, it could be missing, significant items in it if it's coming in
Yeah.
fast.
One would think, based on the numbers that we see.
Well, we had one group pull out because one of our specifications was if you're going to put in a proprietary system, then you need to have people, the company needs to have certified people trained on those systems, as opposed to just hiring an intern to come in and do the work for you. And they pulled out of the process. They said, no, we just don't have the ability to have our people certified to the level you want them certified to work on a specialized system like this. And they pulled out. So this hasn't even been vetted for those types of things yet.
Yeah, either one, really.
Yeah.
But we'll keep the board updated, and, we're looking to, fast is slow on this, so we're looking to, pinpoint that first board meeting in March.
It is a
Such an
275
expensive
day
project, it'd be
process.
nice to have a couple to really compare that number to.
I know, that's why we invited 7, and, I feel we had a good the meeting that we walked the site, I feel we had, a couple interested ones there, not a lot. This is kind of more of a niche, area, not a lot of vendors do it in the area, so
I can say that when GPD had done the facilities assessment in 2019 and then redid them for us in 2022, when you look at the middle school, high school fire and security system, it came to, their estimate was $767,000. And both are well below, they are below that estimate. That was a 2022 estimate. So I was happy to see the numbers coming in below what that estimate was, because that's kind of what we were thinking. So,
it's tricky, because you want, more vendors just to, compare, look at the numbers, and,
Yeah.
But then you look at this, and, it is an urgent necessity, because, it broke, and we had to, kind of go about what we did a couple months ago. So it's, perfect world, everything just perfectly fits in place, but not a lot of times does that happen. So we have to just kind of make do with, the path forward that we have.
Plus, I mean, it's not a do or die, but it would be nice to be able to support a local vendor too.
But we're marching along, and,
Well,
we'll-
if it's the right one.
Yep, we're marching along with things, so.
Okay,
And that's all I have for tonight.
all right. Keep marching. Section 9, Superintendent's Business.
okay, items for consideration, I have 9A, 10A, 11A, and 12A through H.
Okay, I understand a motion for those items, please?
So moved.
I-
So moved.
I did not catch who that was, so.
I'll second.
Ms. Greco and Ms. Prowse. Okay, discussion.
All right, so 9A is a memorandum of understanding with our Teachers Association to change the workday to accommodate a scheduled test prep schedule. We've been doing this for 9 years. It is a change to the workday per the contract, so this is an annual MOU that we do. Every year they discuss where they're going to continue to implement that schedule, and so far they've continued to do that over at the middle school and high school. It's been fairly successful. Next, 10A, it's to accept the resignation of van driver, Mr. James Dankel. This is a second job for him. His primary job is in healthcare and has driven a van for us for a number of years. We made him a kind of a permanent van driver 2 years ago, and his children went to school here. He's lived in the community, and for retirement purposes of all of his jobs and moving down to be near family and grandkids in the Carolinas, building a house and moving down there.
Oh, I didn't know
His
that.
house in Brooklyn Heights is already sold, so
Wow.
he's going to finish out this school year and then move down after that.
Great.
So we really thank him not just for the service he gave as a van driver, but for believing and committing to Cog Heights Schools enough to live here and send his family here.
Right,
So-
and he and his wife were both quite active some years back in various committees, so.
Yeah.
It's, sorry to hear that they're moving, but glad they can be with family and in a little.
I'd say that the
village.
weather's better in the Carolinas, but I don't know. It's
Yeah.
been pretty brutal down south this year. Next, we have the updated supplemental contract list. You're going to see assistant and varsity baseball coaches. You're going to see assistant softball coach. We have scorers for our home track meets, as well as our spring boys and girls faculty managers. So as winter winds down, we are now looking towards the springtime. And then under 12, we have a memorandum of understanding with Cuyahoga County Community College. This is for their College Credit Plus program. So this is, I believe, the third that we've done this year. I'll look to get a couple more come in before the school year is over. This goes into effect for next school year. Letter B, this is to adopt high-quality instructional materials for our kindergarten team in CKLA, which is Core Knowledge Language Arts. It's hard to believe that they are almost through the second year of that implementation. Mrs. Cummins and Mrs. Martins and I did a presentation 2 years ago talking about the science of reading and the curriculum that we were looking to adopt, and we did a 2-year run of that, and it's now time to renew. This fulfills Ohio Department of Education and Workforce requirement that in K through 5, actually it's K through 3, but any grade levels in a K through 3 building must also align to the science of reading and high-quality instructional materials. So this fulfills that. We also have to have a state-approved assessment to do K through 3 diagnostic reading assessments, as well as a Tier 1 dyslexia screener. We presented on that night. That was Amplify's M-Class DIBELS, which allows us to do regular benchmarking as well as help us with our Tier 2 interventions. So it's time to renew that for another 3 years. I would look for future items coming for the other grade levels, 1 through 5 as well. So next, we have to approve the agreement with Strategic Solutions for document scanning. So right now, all of our documents are in paper form. They're in boxes in storage rooms. Some documents have to be contained indefinitely. And this would allow us to take our most sensitive and longest records that require the longest retention and scan those digitally. I can think of maybe a decade ago, Willoughby East Lakes Board of Education building actually caught fire and burnt down, and they contained all of their paper records. They had not digitized them at that time. So we've been talking about doing this for about 7 or 8 years. When I was principal here, I was actually talking to Sandy Riley about this. So slow is fast, Mr. Buccio. So next, we have the membership into the Ohio High School Athletic Association for our middle school and our high school sports. It's an annual membership agreement. Letter F, we have a 3-year agreement. This is a modified agreement with PSI, who provides our registered nurse and our school health assistant services. Did you want to talk about this at this time? I mean, essentially what we found was through the auditing process that PSI happens to fall under the umbrella of a group that requires SERS or STRS benefits. And going back to, I believe it was a 2013 agreement with Cuyahoga Heights Schools, we opted out of that. Well, what we find out through our auditors and through conversation with STRS, SERS, is that opt-out isn't an option. These people actually fall under that umbrella. And so from this point forward, we're amending our contract to cover the cost of the retirement benefit that we're supposed to be paying. Is that covered?
That's correct.
Okay. And Mr. Muccio and Mr. Burek has done a lot of legwork and homework on this, not just with PSI, but with all of our other vendors, so we hope this is the only one. Letter G, this is to approve for the remainder of the year additional school psychologist services at a rate of $80 per hour on an as-needed basis. And George, I know you could talk more about this, but we have a large overflow of students requiring evaluations. We're not only required to evaluate students who physically attend our schools, but any student who's a resident of our school district who attends is that an outplaced school or a private school?
So outplace, yes, private schools know they have
Okay.
their own district, so we lucked into having our first non-public move into the district about 3 years ago. They're called New Story Independence, but they're located in Brooklyn Heights. Causes some confusion, but we're required by law to do evaluations for any of the students who go to that school. So even if they live in Cleveland or any of the surrounding communities, our school psychologist has to do their evaluations, which takes away from, obviously, when we first hired her, that wasn't part of the process. We didn't have that added burden. There's a few remaining this year that we need some assistance with. Then next year, there's actually a big uptick there. But it's just part of the planning process. You know, we're pretty aware of our own students that we currently have that have qualified for special services, but at the same time, with some of these things that Mr. Young talked about earlier with M-Class and some of the different interventions we do for students, when we see there's a need in place, we want to be able to get an evaluation done in a timely fashion. There's timelines that are required with that, but when there's a need, you know, sometimes you have a couple on schedule that you see, and then there could be 3 requests from either parents or teachers for a student in need, and you know we have to provide that. So this gives us a little more flexibility in the event that our school psychologist doesn't have the time frame to complete those evaluations. We have another resource with PSI and having some on-call school psychologists to help with those evaluations.
I am not finding it now. When I went through here looking at the board docs, I think it was with this item, since it was a 3-year thing, the price was sizably, like, a lot different
Oh,
each
so
year.
you're looking at F?
I don't know
Yeah, so
where it
you're
is.
looking at F. So F's PSI agreement. So
There's two
for
PSI
for
agreements.
for the very first one, so if you look at F,
Yeah,
the reason why this year's is a lot lower is because we've already paid. We'll have been through February,
okay,
so it was closer to those other
Effective
amounts.
February 3rd, whereas
okay.
the other years are effective from the start of the contract year.
But year 2 says $15,000.
This is the 44 for this year, the rest of this year, and then
And the hourly rate goes up every year for the nurse?
I mean, where did I
Yeah, for the
see that?
substitutes. So PSI really did a good job in this process. They were very cooperative. They could have came back, I think, with a much larger number, but they've been a good partner to the district for quite a few years. So, you know, they have to work with the employees. They actually have to pay more into their retirement to STRS as well as us as the employer, ad hoc employer as through the contract. So we have to make up that ground, and PSI took a bigger burden of that additional cost than we did in this 3-year contract. So we were thankful for them for doing that for us. But again, it was a couple-month process to kind of vet through all this and work with them and work with the employees that were impacted that they sent to us for our school nursing and student health aid.
I could pull open the original, I'd have to pull open the original agreement from back in the spring, and that way you could see the side-by-side of what the true difference is. We owe $44,000 additional this year, because we've already paid from August until this point, so effective February 3rd, we still owe $44,000 for this year. And then, I believe the cost was maybe, I'm gonna estimate, let's say it was $110,000 we were supposed to pay next year, now it's $115,000.
Okay.
So it's adjusted by whatever that difference is to pay that SERS amount for the people. So
And in my mind, I wasn't thinking school year, I was thinking calendar year. So I was thinking, God, that's a big difference, than having paid just 2 months into the
Right.
contract, when in fact it's not, it's August. Okay. All right, thank you for that clarification.
no, it's a great question. Finally, letter H, I'll just go ahead and read this. It's a motion to accept the recommendation of GPD Group and award an agreement contract to the lowest responsible and responsive bidder in the amount of $403,493 and approve the Rulon Company for the Hillside Stabilization Project. Note, GPD was hired on September 9th of 2024 as the owner's representative to oversee and manage this project. And the Board of Education approved advertising for bids December 12th of 2024. So of the attachments that you see there, the first attachment is the letter from GPD officially recommending, they said that 4 bids were received on January 17th of 2025 for the above referenced bid package. And following that scope review on January 23rd of 2025, with Rulon Construction, the overall apparent low bidder is Rulon. And the overall total of the apparent low base bid can be awarded in accordance with the total project budget. So continue reading, you see the amount that we have entered there, $403,493. So that was the first attachment. The second attachment were simply it's the agreement. A little bit about this process. So we'd been sent a draft by GPD. Mr. Muccio did some digging and found that Brooklyn Schools had done a similar project, used a similar document. And so what we did is we sat down and we looked at them side by side, and we internally had some recommendations, some questions, and some suggestions. Then when we met with Mr. Nolde over Zoom, we communicated all of those, and then he put them into this draft document that you see here. So this is, to our knowledge, this is the complete document. We sent that to, actually GPD sent that to our attorney, us, which we sent to our attorney, and then they sent that to Rulon and their attorney. We got notification tonight from our attorney that this looks to be in good standing and good order. So no adjustments from their end. As long as there are no adjustments from Rulon, this is likely to be the final document.
Like an example, as we went through it, on our side, we found one of the numbers was off. So that was just one example. As you really start, looking for the details, we caught that.
Yeah. Yeah, we looked at every number. It said 4,065. It said 4,650. All right, the number was off, but we caught those things, made sure they were corrected. You know how detailed Mr. Muccio is, and then he had George and I in the room, and we
He was testing us.
We
if
went through it line by
catch it.
line. It was good. It
On
was
this
really a
page,
good
what's
thing.
wrong, you'd say. We'd have to see who could find the mistake first.
Yeah. No, so
Candy or something if you got it right.
so we feel good. We feel good that our recommendations went back to GPD. They sent those back to us. Our attorney signed off on. So we feel really, really good that we took the time to do our due diligence. And then you have the stabilization specs. Those specs were discussed in our pre-bid meeting, and then you saw the blueprint plans for the hill stabilization. So those are your 4 attachments.
And there's a lot here because this is probably the biggest project we've encountered, in our career here, I would say. So, we just want to do our due diligence.
Yeah, outside of replacing the turf on the football field, probably.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
this is up there.
Yeah, it's
Well, thank you for all of the work. It's been a long time discussing, and we're making good progress, and appreciate everyone's involvement in getting it done. So thank you. Any other discussion on these items? Hearing none, treasurer, please call the roll.
Mrs. Deca,
Aye.
Ms. Prowse,
Aye.
Mrs. Etter,
Aye.
Mr. Chaki.
Aye, motion passes 4-0. Section 14, superintendent discussion and
Yeah, I'll
comments.
Try not to talk too long because we've got board policies still to go through, and that's, actually, those could be the comments within themselves. But I did provide you a copy. I apologize for the lettering being off. That came from a third party, an advocacy group that I participate in. This is kind of the highlights of the governor's final budget bill proposal for fiscal year 26 and 27. I'll point out some highlights there. Highlight is they're going to continue to phase in the Fair School Funding Plan, 83.3%. Well, it has to still be approved. This is his recommendation, so let me be clear. In 26 and 100% in 27, but it does not update the base input. So what it means is it's going to keep the inputs from, let's say, 2022. It's not going to update to 2025 when they when they do this. So by not doing that, the cost to educate a pupil is different in 2025 than it was in 2022. So they're not going to update any of the base inputs. So it's not as much as it would be if they were to fund it at current inputs. They'll also, this is not a highlight, it's a low light, phase out the guarantee for school districts, through which guarantee is uncertain, by reducing the guarantee to 95% in 26 and 90% in 27. So I believe we're one of the school districts that are on the guarantee. Is that correct? We receive, let's say, approximately $850 per student, $900 per student. In 26, we would only receive 95% of that value. And in 27, we will only receive 90% of that value, not 100%. So we already don't receive a lot, and they're going to take even more away.
Where this really impacts schools, for us, if we think back to our 5-year forecast, state aid makes up a very, very small percentage. We actually get more in tuition money than state aid. So any increase or decrease to state aid doesn't have, very much an effect on us. It's property taxes that is the revenue driver. If we were like a Parma, city school district, for example, any fluctuation with state aid, which probably makes up about 40 to 50, maybe more of their revenue, 50%, that's huge. Because if you lock in a collective bargaining agreement, if you have a bunch of, permanent improvements that you have to make, and then you see a swing in state aid, that affects your budget. But for us, it really doesn't. So
Well, what you're saying is, we've gotten used to getting less from the state, so if they're gonna give us even less, we'll deal with it.
right, as Tom would say, it was us and, the islands of Lake Erie and
Yeah.
Independence, and we were like bottom 5. So that's really never gonna change. So, there's no impact really. We get more in interest from, the bank in 1 month than state aid's gonna, any change here. But it's important. It just.
Yeah, last school year, we received 14.8% of our funding from the state of Ohio.
How much?
14.8%. 3.5 came from federal, 15 from other sources, and 66.7% came from local.
And you're saying that we get more in tuition dollars than state aid dollars. That's what you said, Matt Mucho, right?
Appears to be so by 0.2%. So, and not part of the budget bill, but there's been talk about going to open enrollment for all, which would eliminate our tuition program, so it would take away that 15%. That wasn't part of this budget proposal. As you work your way down, I'm not going to go through everything here. The state of Ohio has scholarship programs, like the John Peterson Scholarship, for example. There's talk about students being able to stack scholarship money with voucher money. So instead of receiving $8,400 to go to a high school, you could stack that on top of a John Peterson Scholarship and get more money to go to a private school. You'll
Oh,
see.
it's high school scholarship.
Oh, no. I just gave that example because $8,400 is high school voucher money.
Oh, I mean K through 12. I was thinking when you said scholarship, like, I think of
Yeah, it's not
college.
scholarship to
It's not
college.
that. Okay, I was
No,
like, wait a
this
minute.
is
Okay.
scholarship for
Got it.
special education, autism.
Yep.
There's a Cleveland Foundation scholarship.
Okay.
So there's 5 scholarships. More
You
money.
talk about these scholarships goes to individuals or goes to the schools?
It goes to the schools for the individuals, to educate the individuals.
Okay.
How much? About $30,000? Is that what one of them?
So
is it a Peterson scholarship? About
autism
30,000?
scholarship, 34,000.
34,000.
And then John Peterson goes up to 34, but there's a cap on John Peterson scholarships that we award each year. Those are 2 major ones for special education. So what this would allow somebody to do is if they, have a certain disability that allows them to get that scholarship, then they're able to also take the Ed Choice scholarship money on top of that. Where currently you can't take both. So this expands the money available to people who go to private schools. And again, there's some schools that are,
They don't accept those type of students, right?
well, there's some, there are other
Some do.
private schools that are specifically targeted towards some students with more severe needs. So there is a lot of that, but there are a lot of our schools that take them. We have a number of kids that live in our community, not a large number, but there's a couple that we have to go in and approve these scholarships. There's no money coming from us. It goes directly from the state to the school of attendance for them. But it's, like I said, it's a lot of money moving around that I'm not sure everybody's aware of.
Yeah, a lot of
So if
moving and
they-
shaking, yeah.
Those students came here, we would not get that.
We would get $850.
$850.
Or 90% of that.
So a student taking the scholarship going somewhere else they get 34,000, up to 34,000, and we get 850.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate because, especially with special education funding, if they funded that same amount for the students who came to school here, it would do a lot for the students, and it would do a lot for us to help reduce costs overall for
Yeah.
the staff that support them.
There's still going to be a focus on literacy. You're going to see that. There's a focus on school bus safety, grants coming down the pike for that. Money to fund Ohio Principal Apprenticeship Program. The merit scholarships for those students who stay in state that get nominated, that's going to continue. And then you're going to see, if you go to the back, quite a bit with career tech education. They're going to review and update the industry recognized credential list to ensure Ohio's schools and districts are preparing students for careers on the Ohio top jobs list. So that's not just going to be at your career centers. There's going to be a focus in your traditional public schools as well. There's going to be money going to support career planning and workforce readiness through partnerships with local organizations to ensure students have access to career coaching, mentoring, and career pathways. So look for graduation plans to be called career plans, and that career planning is pushing down to the middle school, which there's already law and policy in place that requires career advising. But schools can opt out of that. That opt-out's not going to be possible in the future, which is okay. We're already in line with that. Increase the number of in-demand career tech programs across the state, provide additional assistance in mentoring and career advising, as well as a focus on student mental health and awareness. So there's a lot of good things in the bill, and a lot of proposal, and a lot of things that we're going to wait and see how it shakes out, as well as things taking place at the federal level. We're going to have to wait to see what happens there. So we'll get into that as we get throughout the spring and we get closer to the budget actually being voted on and approved. I'll stop there. I'm crossing fingers that the weather's going to hold up tonight. I don't want to call. Sorry, kids. I don't want to call out school. I think we have the fewest number of days off. That's not a badge of honor, but we were fortunate with last week, and I put that, I think, in my communication. Our buses are stored indoor in heated garages. We don't have to scrape buses when there's ice out, which other school districts do that store their buses outside. We have a luxury in being able to do that. There are a few of us in the area that have indoor storage, so we were able to have school last week. But we would never want to compromise safety. So we'll watch the weather tonight, and hopefully it holds. I think it's just going to be rain tonight.
Yes.
But there will be a snowstorm coming this weekend, I think. So, but it's a 4-day weekend, no school on Friday for Staff Professional Development Day. Valentine's Day, what a great way to spend with me, on a Professional Development Day. And then Monday's President's Day. I got a lot more to talk about in board policies, so I'll just
Right.
hold off there.
All right.
Thank you for that.
Yes. Moving on to board business resolutions, we have two. One to approve attendance at the 2025 OAS FEP Spring Conference.
It was 15, yeah.
I'm sorry, did I? I apologize.
It's kind
How
of,
did I do that?
yeah.
Oh, I thought that's where I was. I missed. When I went to click on it, I missed the wrong one. So,
15.
yeah, 15, electronic equipment.
You had two
Update,
policies for
two
second
policies.
reading. Yep, related
Electronic
to the
equipment.
amendment to Senate Bill 29.
And then Senate Bill 29, okay? We've already reviewed these, correct?
Yes.
So I'll entertain a motion to accept these two policies.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Proust
I'll second.
and second by Ms. Decker. Any discussion? Hearing none. Treasurer, please call the roll.
Ms. Prouse?
Aye.
Mrs. Decker?
Aye.
Mrs. Etter?
Aye.
Mr. Souchaki?
Aye, motion passes 4-0. Now we'll move on to 16 board resolutions. We have two resolutions, one for the spring conference one for the OSBA open house meeting, and I've attached to that one the impact of K-12 policy at the ESC on February 28th.
And then you added that third one.
Yeah, that's
Letter C.
Oh, that's what you're talking about, yeah.
yeah, that's what I meant.
I thought you meant this attachment.
I have a funny story about A. So A
Okay.
is attendance for federal grants, and I really, get a lot back from those. So Matt, we got an email, if you want to kind of give them a quick, 1-minute summary of that.
Yeah, our federal,
funny
well,
story.
our federal grants had been approved. They'd gone through the final review. And Matt reached out and said, we just want to verify we're good with the grants. We can start moving towards actually closing the books on some of these because it takes a couple months. And then we get an email back that says, actually, we made a mistake. Your Title I, you had gone in and you had allocated money for supplies and you hadn't reached out to your non-public schools and consulted with them. And it was literally an email like this long in the tiny font. And Matt comes down freaking out, like, what did we do wrong? Like, we did everything right? So we actually called down to the state and they said, well, give us your IRN. So I said 046557. And they type it in and they're like, oh, we typed in the wrong IRN. We missed it by a number. We were off by a number. Sorry, you guys are good. And we're like, but somebody isn't. Are you going to let that person know? Because somebody is in some trouble. So, but it's the level of collaboration and detail that when we get to a certain point, we're pretty confident that we have dotted our I's and crossed our T's, and kind of threw us into an emergency mode there for a little bit, saying we were out of compliance with this. So
Someone else has had it.
only we would find that funny. That's like a joke we laugh about. Like, everybody else is like,
They're
okay,
"Oh, we're
sounds
off
like
by
fun.
number."
Yeah.
This is an
That
agony.
email's not for you. You guys are okay.
Somebody else is getting late notice that they're off. They're off. Oh, well. Okay, so where are we here now?
We're in 16, A,
Motion?
B, and C.
For A, B, and C.
I think we're ready to vote for those, for the.
Do we have a motion?
Motion. Need a motion
We
first.
need a motion for the board resolutions.
Yes.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Decker.
No, Ms. Etter?
Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Etter,
I'll second.
that's what I meant. It just didn't come out right. And Ms. Decker did second it. Any discussion on those two items, including the one with the addition? Hearing none, treasurer, please call the roll.
Mrs. Etter?
Aye.
Mrs. Decker?
Aye.
Ms. Prowse?
Aye.
Mr. Souchaki?
Aye, motion passes 4-0. That gets us up to 18. And I think we've got a few items here in section 18.
26.
Policy review.
Yeah, so so letter A is just an overview. It's a legal ease overview. So as you read letter A, that attachment, it's just explaining in legal detail the policies that you are looking at for first reading. Now, policies for first reading are B down through V. Okay?
That
W,
because-
X, Y, and Z, I just want to have just kind of like an open discussion, because we're not on a critical timeline to approve those yet. Some policies go into effect, the law takes effect February 25th, whereas others don't take effect till April 9th. So I have a little bit of time to get some information, and I do need the board to chew on some of these pieces just a little bit, and no responses have to be made tonight, but I do want to have some time with those. So I will be as brief, comprehensive, but I want to give the right amount of information. So, and I've given you kind of a document to follow along with. I'm going to skip to the second one there. So Senate Bill 104 is an important bill that is influencing several of our policies here. In fact, it's affecting policy 2271, policy 2340, and policy 7421. This was the College Credit Plus bill that had a bathroom and facilities requirement within the College Credit Plus bill. It was a really odd bill as they were going through and vetting this. It was called the College Credit Plus bathroom bill. But specifically, the part with respect to school facilities was dealing with bathrooms, locker rooms, other facilities that students would use. And this law says that students are required to use bathrooms and locker rooms that match their birth gender. So any facility that is designated as multi-use, all right, has to be designated for single gender at birth use. So a boys' restroom that is multi-use, multiple stalls, can only be used by biologically born boys. A girls' restroom, multiple stalls, has to be designated for individuals born as a girl at birth. This goes for your locker rooms, any facility in a school where that would be designated. Now, you can still have a family restroom, and that family restroom can be unisex, but it has to be a single-use restroom, and it has to be designated as such. So if you have a single-use restroom that is designated as men's restroom, that's not multi-use, it's only for men. But if you could take that single-stall restroom, which we have a few, and you could say this is just a family restroom. There are some exceptions to the bathroom bill, so to speak. Children under the age of 10 need adult assistance. So if you're a parent, you're at an event, and you're not going to leave your 8-year-old child, at a basketball game. Here, you just wait in the lobby. I'll be back. I'm going to the bathroom. You can take that child into the restroom, into the stall with you if they're under the age of 10, and they can be of the opposite gender. People with disabilities who need assistance, we see this with students with some physical handicaps that may need an aide, paraprofessional, or some other adult of the opposite gender that helps with toileting and things like that. So that's possible to do. School employees performing certain job duties. For example, if you are are cleaning ladies, for example, are allowed to enter the men's restroom to clean the men's restroom. If you had a male basketball coach who's coaching girls basketball, you're allowed to enter the locker room for the purpose of coaching the girls. All right, so you can enter that girls' locker room. So there's that piece, and then there's emergency situations. So if you have a fight breaks out, or a child is yelling for help, or a child is reported to be having a seizure in a restroom, you can enter that facility as the opposite gender. So it's pretty clear cut, I think. And if people have questions, they just simply have to ask. But this does go to effect February 25th of 2025. This was passed during the lame duck. Actually, it wasn't passed during. Lame duck session. It was passed during then. So again, that affects 3 policies. So that's one of the big policies. And then there's another. It's a big law that affects policy. Another big law is House Bill 8. House Bill 8 is designated as the Parents' Bill of Rights. Parents' Bill of Rights had 2 prongs to it. One requires, and it's actually spelled out as the Parents' Bill of Rights in this new policy that you guys are going to see, that talks about parent notification when there are significant changes in students' wellness or behavior, and it lists by definition what those categories are within the policy. So there's this notification process that has to happen. But then within that policy is something called religious instructional release time, where we currently have a policy that addresses religious release time, but it's an optional policy. You can opt in or opt out. There is no opting out anymore. You have to allow outside organizations to have time to come and pull your kids from school to be instructed in religious matters. The schools get to designate that, and I think one of the policies I have is just to discuss only. There's nothing in the law that states exactly how many times a year this can happen. It can be 1 time a year during a lunch and recess time. It can be any time of the year during lunch or recess time. It could be during study hall time. It has to be during the normal operational hours of school, and we can define what that threshold is. Understanding that if you allow one religious group to do this, you have to allow all religious groups to do this, including those that are on the opposite side of what we think about with religion. Everybody thinks religion, God, holy, but this can also be religion, satanic, very, very different, maybe different from your values. So we've always talked about it. We've always known that if you let in one group, you're going to have to let in any group. So you have to really think about what are we comfortable with as a board. You may say, bring them in every day. It's fine. If we're going to do that, then we have to make a decision on whether we're going to background check them. And if we're going to background check them, then we have to background check everybody.
I'm confused. I thought this was, so this would be someone coming into our school to do the religious instruction?
They would not be in our school. They would show up and they would take kids off-site
Yes.
for a period of time and then bring them back.
Right, okay.
Okay? So it's
So
different.
what's the background check? Oh, because they're taking
So
your
because they
child.
are taking our children, and
Yeah.
now this requires parental consent. They can't just show up, hey, we're going to take George. George's parents have to say it's okay for them to do this. But are we going to background check them?
Because we're still responsible.
Because we still have some degree of responsibility, even though they're taking us off property. We have to decide if we're going to background check them or not. If we background check them, then we have to have the conversation. Do we background check everybody who may pull our kids from, temporarily out of our classroom settings? If the PTO shows up and they want to take your kids to a book fair, they're technically not during instruction time. Do we have to background check our PTO? Do we have to background check the Boy Scouts if they're going to they're going to come in and they're going to pull kids during lunch to talk about Boy Scouts and they're going to do a little activity together? Do we have to background check those people that are going to come in? So you can't just selectively decide to do things in public education. It's what you do for one, you have to do for all. And so those are things that you're not going to make this is not a first reading on some of these things tonight, so you have time to process it, and when we get to the next meeting, we might have a little bit more discussion about what do you think about, so that we can talk about that in public session. It won't be necessarily a vote, but it does help us determine which boxes to check, what numbers to write into the policy. So
Sorry, do we have students leaving for religious
We-
instruction today?
we do not.
Okay. Like what would be, I'm trying to think of an example, like
There's
a
a
PSR, like in.
There's a group out there, the main group that has got the attention through sizable donations to certain lawmakers, LifeWise. LifeWise Academy, they have their own vans, they have their own program, a curriculum that they implement. Essentially, they'll put out to the different school communities, would you like to be part of this? And they have if you're interested, you sign a petition, and once they hit the threshold of 50, then they show up at your school and they say, okay, when can we take your kids?
Okay.
And yeah, and it's I'm sure they're doing good things. I'm not saying that they're not. It's just you start to starts to blur the line of the establishment clause and public versus private, and but we currently already allow students to be excused for religious expression. So if you have a Muslim holiday or a Jewish holiday that doesn't align with our school calendar and you need to be off, you can get 3 days for religious expression. We have allowed, if a student says, hey, I need to leave for this, we've allowed that to happen on individual bases and been pretty consistent with it. But this is one group has lobbied to be the group.
I don't even see how logistically this can work. You're taking these students out of their lunch periods or their study halls. You can't take them out of their core classes.
Well,
Are you
we
gonna-
have to define what core classes are as well. This is largely an elementary, from what I've talked about with other superintendents. This has been going on for a couple years, actually. Elementary is the biggest group because that's the most impressionable group, and that's where you can have your biggest impact.
But, I mean, like, how long, drive them somewhere to have whatever, religious instruction, then drive them back, I mean,
Yeah.
can't do that within an hour. It's gonna be more than an hour.
No,
Lunch
you-
periods are
yeah.
even that long.
It can't be more than the time that you designate.
Well, I think that's what you're getting
That's
at,
what I'm
like,
getting at. How are you gonna do this?
You're making it work.
Also, we have, I know, like, there's strict attendance rules, and, you know, if you miss a meeting, like, does this
It
count
counts against
that?
your,
Yeah, so it still count, I mean, so just like anything else, you're still racking up time that you're not in school. You know,
Yeah.
So people might end up on attendance plans because they choose this option.
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, so there's some things to chew on there. So House Bill 8 affects policy 4223, which is religious time for religious instruction. That's the name of the policy. You also see 5780.0, which is a new policy called the Parents' Bill of Rights. And then it also affects policy 8500, which is food services. So if a group comes in and takes your kids during lunch, who's responsible for feeding the kids?
Still us?
Well, you have to opt into that. Now, we've always been in the mindset, if a kid wants a meal, they're our kid, we're feeding a kid. We're not gonna get into this whole thing, well, sorry, they
took
took
'em at
you out,
lunchtime.
I'm sorry they didn't feed you. Like, we don't do that here. That's just not what we do. So, but those are two of the biggest bills that came out. There was also House Bill 206, which allows us to add to a policy the ability to suspend students beyond the typical 80 days for major infractions to 180 days. It does encapsulate threats, like threats made online, social media, or physically, like hit lists, in which that you deem there is a legitimate threat. Like if a kid makes a hit list and everybody knows the kid is just being, immature, versus, no, this was legitimate. There was a plan. This person was going to carry this out. This gets picked up in this particular bill. And then you can expel students for very specific reasons for up to 180 days, should it be necessary. That is the whole school year.
But we talked about this before, like if there was an incident and someone was suspended or expelled, and then whatever, it was like in the middle of the year, and they were expelled for like a month or two, but yet there was still time left over at the end of the year, does the other people in the school, how would they feel about that?
Yeah, and this, I believe, allows you to take,
Some community service and some
take,
other,
yeah,
but it's only, I think it was only up to 10 days.
yeah.
if I recall correctly.
Yeah, so I need to get more information. This is one of those for discussion, really just, it was for me to give you some information only about that, because I've got to get some more information about just that very thing. If that happens on the last day of school, does this carry into the next school year for these specific infractions? So I just need to get more information. I just don't have it yet, because the guidance is just now coming out.
I mean, expulsion is a pre-prescribed process, that people follow through with. One of the things in this area too, we have our threat assessment. I don't know if you guys remember early in the year, we approved that CSTAG training for the admin team and things that we do school-wide as far as threat assessment. So there's information that's gathered, there's a whole process to determine what level that is. That's something that the superintendent then is able to use as a data source as he's making a decision of what's appropriate or not appropriate for those students.
All right, so I'm just going to quickly go through then the policies that are up for a first reading. The first one is just a technical correction, policy 0131.1. This streamlines the process for making technical corrections. Let me give you an example. Right now, Matt Young, Assistant Superintendent, is listed as the compliance officer for the school district and board policy. This policy, when it's approved, will allow me to go, I can communicate to you, board, I'm going to be making in these particular policies the change that Matt Young's title is now superintendent with a different phone number, and George Burek and Elena Scotton have both been trained to be compliance officers officially, and they need to be added to these policies. We can do that without voting on the policies, but I do have to communicate it and so that you understand what that correction is. So that's what that policy will allow us to do. And by doing this revised policy, they are rescinding 0171 which is the review of policy. So they're adding essentially 0171 into 0131.1. Next is, this is 1422.01, drug-free workplace. These policies apply to administrators, so this is just bringing a policy to the administrative side as you have with the student side, the classified staff side, and the certified staff side. So it's just adding, now we have consistently all job titles within the school district. Policy 2260.02 is called single gender classes and activities. We currently don't have this policy. This is a revised policy. I don't know that we need to add it because we,
I'm sorry, where are you?
I think it's on the list.
it's on the list at the bottom as discussion only.
Okay.
I apologize. That's down at letter W. I'm just reading them in numerical order.
Okay.
This sets the rules for when schools can separate students by gender. For example, by physical education class is an example of something like that. We don't have this policy because we don't have any single gender classes.
But our people who went to school here know that the north gym used to be called the girls' gym and the south gym used to be the boys' gym, so.
Yeah.
We don't do it anymore.
So I don't know that this is one that's why I just put as discussion only, unless you feel passionately about adding this policy, which we certainly can. We just currently don't have it on our books to revise. So is it necessary if we don't have a need for it? But I certainly can. It's not a,
Except letter C.
Yeah.
Do we still do that in elementary school?
see here. It's got a-
Human sexuality
Don't
classes.
they separate them?
Yeah, we have not, actually not taught human sexuality classes since before COVID. And it was done by the school nurse, so we have not done sex ed in the elementary school. Since COVID, right? Before COVID.
Where do they get their sex ed class?
Yeah, really, I should probably know that.
Honestly, from this point forward, I don't know that anybody's going to talk about sex ed
Yeah.
unless you get to the health class because
Like, does everybody take that health class, or is that an optional class?
well, there's no health class in the elementary school.
They don't get to sophomore year?
There is, sophomore year of high school.
Great.
So part of the Parent Bill of Rights is you cannot teach any sexual content K through 3.
Okay.
You cannot do it. It's in the Parents' Bill of Rights. It's prohibited.
Okay.
Starting in 4th and 5th grade, anything you talk about has to be age appropriate. It's open-ended. What's age appropriate, right? Anything that we teach in our curriculum as a school district that may have any reference to sex, whether it's in a nonfiction.
Even if it's not even that, it's
Yep.
just body changes, that stuff.
So body changes, that happens in the health class at the high school level.
When you're a sophomore.
When you're a freshman or a sophomore, and it's by the, yep. Yep.
You start wearing your deodorant, kids.
Yeah, well, I don't disagree. Now, we do embed certain things. I will say, we don't just let kids go, right? We do have our school counselors and our nurse who steps in at key times to talk about certain things like you're saying deodorant. All right, but currently we don't do health as a standalone class in the middle school, and we do it starts in the high school. So yeah, there are some gaps missing there.
I do
When my kids
remember,
were in-
It's
I
a-
do remember,
That was a big thing, like that, they would send a letter home.
yeah, I
tomorrow's
remember
the
the
day,
letter,
they're
and you had to
separating
sign
boys
off
and
on
girls.
this. I remember this is the day we're gonna talk about it, so when your child came home, you were like,
Yep.
did you have this special class
Yeah,
today?
it's
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
There's that.
I understand. It's a tricky thing. I remember that class myself. So sophomore year. All right, where are we? Losing track. So
Sorry.
I think that should be thought about a little differently of all this policy stuff. But okay.
won't disagree. Policy 2271. This is back at the top. revised policy. This is changes to College Credit Plus. It manages how high school students get notified about those courses, and then the presentations that we give has to be consistent across the state of Ohio, so a school can't give a different College Credit Plus presentation at Cuyahoga Heights than they do at Garfield. So there are some changes there. Policy 2340, this deals with field trips and overnight accommodations. This has, so when we talked about I want to get my bills right here. Students cannot cohabitate on trips. Only students of the same biological gender at birth can be in the same hotel rooms if you have an overnight stay. So that's essentially what this is saying. So when we talked about the bathroom bill, this is an extension of that bathroom bill. That's Senate Bill 104, so.
Okay.
2430.02, 2431, this is extracurricular slash athletics. This is tied to the AEDs, the AED law that went into effect, House Bill 47. It requires that we do training on cardiac arrest to students, to coaches, to parents at an in-person meeting. It can't just be, here's a video, watch this. We actually have to talk about health risks associated to cardiac arrest.
Do
and
we feel that we
AEDs.
have enough AEDs throughout the buildings?
We feel we have enough within the buildings. Where it gets tricky is when we have athletic contests outside of the building and the
Yes.
building is locked. How would any spectator or bystander be able to have access to an
Do
AED?
you know where they are?
Yeah, so that's one of the things that we're going to have to make a modification to moving forward.
I remember seeing a news story recently with Denzel Ward from the Browns, where that's part of his foundation, where he goes to different schools and brings in AEDs.
Mhm.
Yeah, if you remember, we replaced AEDs this school year, ones that were end of life. So we have new AEDs in all the buildings that are within their lifespan. And we're looking at outside installation somewhere near the track, football field area. You know, when we're here, it's not an issue. Our trainer we have a mobile one as well, so she brings it down to the field. But the concern is, okay, if Trinity's here, we don't know if their trainers have that with them. They should, but we want to make that available to anybody using the facilities.
And thinking about the activities that do take place outside, those are, strenuous type, activities, football, track, running and all of that, where there could be an incident of, cardiac arrest
Mhm.
with something like that. So it would be important to have them outside.
All right.
Just curious.
2460, this is a revised bill on special education. As you recall, we, the last meeting, approved a resolution to update our model policy on special education, and this brings us in line with that model policy. 5113, this deals with interdistrict open enrollment, controls how students can attend schools outside of their school district, and adds the provision for military families. So we've seen some relief in, if a military family were to live outside of our school district and wants to go to school here, I believe the new law says that we need to permit that to happen as a military benefit. So anything that deals with the military in some of these bills, it's aligning to the fact it's giving those families a little bit more flexibility when where they're going to educate their children. Because currently we don't have interdistrict open enrollment, but it would allow it for a military family. Policy 5120, this is assignment within a district. This doesn't really affect us because we only have one elementary school, one middle school, one high school. But if you had multiple elementary schools, there are certain provisions you have to adhere to so that you're not, don't have disproportionality in one building versus another. So for example, you couldn't put all of your students with disabilities in one building for convenience. If we had a big school district, their elementary school is literally like across the street, but you're like, sorry, you can't go there. You have to go to the special ed elementary school. You can't do things like that. So, but that's not an issue for us. 5131 is transfer students. It corrects the application of House Bill 147 for athletic eligibility, fixes the rules for transfer student athletes, and clarifies when transfer students can participate in sports. So these are things like decisions if Independence has swimming and we don't have swimming, can the child swim in Independence? Policies like this allow for those things to either happen or not happen. Schools can say, no, sorry, we're not going to participate in that, or some schools can opt into it. So policies like that allow you to accommodate those students. Policy 5223 is at the bottom. That's the religious time for religious instruction. We talked about that. That's just for discussion only at the bottom. 5330 is the use of medications, over-the-counter drug administration and seizure medications. It allows you to determine which staff members have the ability to give over-the-counter medication, or whether you want students to handle certain types of medications themselves. So this was a new law. Actually, there were two, House Bill 70 and then House Bill 206, both affect this. One goes into effect March 20th, the other on April 9th. Pretty much in line with our current policy with updated language. 5350, student health, well-being, and suicide prevention. This actually aligns with House Bill 33, which was the budget bill for 24-25 that went into effect back in October of 23. It promotes student mental health and safety and adds comprehensive mental health support and training programs on the topic. Getting there, letter O is on graduation requirements, 5460. This adds new ways that students can earn their diploma seals. So there's been some updates from the Department of Education workforce, and this allows us to update those graduation requirements. 5610 is at the bottom for discussion only. That's the removal and suspension and expulsion. That allows you to see all the new languages there and the particular options to get an understanding as to why, what they're thinking with this 180-day extension out to 180 days and the different processes you have to go through in order to allow that to happen. But that's just for your review, no first reading. 5751, parental status of students. So these are, if a student is pregnant and has a child while still in high school, this allows for certain protections and rights. So you can read through those as well, but this brings it in line with some of the same protections and policies we have in place for staff members. So if you have a mother who's breastfeeding and needs to pump during the day, this would allow that to happen, except this is for students. Policy 5780.01 is a new policy. This is the Parents' Bill of Rights. Really talking specifically about notifications if you see significant changes to the student's well-being, which can be mental, physical, it can be academic. A piece of this deals with, there's health and sexuality content. It tells you when you can discuss or teach sexuality content without parent notification, and when you need to notify parents that you may be teaching a novel that has, I think Speak is an example of a book that we teach in the freshman year. We send out a notification of parents that they can opt out of their child reading that particular book and having discussions on it. There's also a piece of this too that is a little, it's kind of undefined, and it's causing some angst in our school counseling circles around the state. If a student is contemplating a change in gender identity, that is a required notification to the parents. So what does that mean if a child says, I'm thinking about it, or if a child comes in and says, let me hypothetically talk about, or I would like to go by a different name that is clearly not of the same gender, there's a notification requirement now. And some of the, and again, there's nothing you can really do about what the law is the law, but let's say you have a child that says, I'm thinking about this, okay, well, I have to notify, I'm afraid that my parent is going to abuse me if I tell my parent. Well, then now you have a mandatory reporting to Children's Services Board. So this gets really tricky, those dynamics. I know at surface level, say, oh, I understand why this law or bill's in place, but sometimes legislators don't think through all the scenarios that we deal with in real time in public education. But you'll see that within this bill. So there's not a lot of boxes to check, actually. It's a new policy. 6151's at the bottom. This is really up to Mr. Muccio. We don't have this policy of how do you approach insufficient funds with respect to checks. I'm going to leave it up to him by the next meeting to determine whether this is something he thinks needs to be. It's not a very long policy, but we currently don't have it in our board policy. So I'm going to kind of lean on him to make that determination whether that should be recommended. Okay? We're almost there. I promise. All right, 7421, this is the bathroom bill, policy specifically for restrooms, locker rooms, shower rooms, and changing rooms. Yeah, back up at letter R.
Thank you.
Letter S, this is a policy on video surveillance and electronic monitoring. This is specifically in regards to like vape detection monitors. So when kids vape, there are detection monitors that are in restrooms, and there's this question of should you be monitoring what's going on in the restroom? There's no video involved, but it's still a monitoring system. So this policy is kind of encapsulating that this is an allowable use for monitoring, is to try to deter vaping. All right. Apologize. Policy 8142, the criminal history record check. This is, I have this down as, it's requirements for contracted service providers. It sets background check rules and adds requirements for contractors who work with students. So there is a little bit of a crossover here, I think, with the religious instructional release time, as well as any other service. Are you background checking your people? 8452.
Let me
go
ask you
ahead.
a question.
Yep.
So when we have this hillside stabilization that comes through,
Yeah,
all those contractors have to be background checked?
they do not, because they're not entering the facilities and school's not in session.
Like a fire alarm project, they would.
If the fire alarm project, if they're in the building and students could be present, then yes, they would. That's correct.
If
We
it's
ask those questions.
Outside,
It's outside, they are
Okay.
gonna have their own porta potty, that was part of the specs, like they have to use the restroom, they have to bring their own little facility. There's no need for them to enter the building whatsoever during the Hillside project.
Interesting.
Yep.
Okay.
We'd actually asked that question, it's a good question.
Okay.
But a big thing in this criminal background check policy is the state's new RAT-back system. Anybody who works with kids has to have a background check. Cleaning ladies, custodians, bus drivers, secretaries, in addition to the teachers and aides who already have to do it. Everybody has to be part of that system. I give Megan Schwab a lot of credit. She's gotten everybody up and compliant with this system. We've met all requirements and deadlines. So she did a great job with that.
But would it apply to those groups that take the kids off campus for religious education?
That we would have to determine in that religious instruction policy 5223, which was a discussion only. So take time to read through it and kind of look at what boxes you think, like should we background check them? If we think we do, I have some administrators that said, yeah, we should background check these people, because if a cult can come in and pull the kids for religious time, then somebody who's affiliated with a church should be able, maybe we should. If that's what we do, that's what we do. And that can be determined in that policy 5223. Okay, good questions. 8452 is about AEDs, the automatic external defibrillators, and cardiopulmonary resuscitation. Specific bill tied to that, which is a law, House Bill 47, that went into effect back October 24th of 24. Just bring us up to date there. Finally, Policy 8500, food services. With respect to this, we essentially said, whatever we do with the religious instruction release time policy, we're going to feed a kid that's our kid that needs a lunch. We're not going to deny kids meals. So regardless of what is decided, we're going to offer up lunch up to our kids. That's an awful lot, and I would like to say that these policy updates are going to get shorter. It's, if federal law changes, like the executive order, for example, to eliminate or reduce the Federal Department of Education, doesn't have major impacts, but could affect federal grants. So if it affects federal grants, any policy on federal grants gets affected. Or if there's reductions in IDEA, it could change your model education policy. Or if the ESSA plan that Ohio submitted back in 2015 got approved in 2017 that dictates why we do things on the state report card. If they just throw all that out, does that change anything that has to do with the state report card and your reporting and monitoring and testing and assessing? We don't know. So at this point, it's just stay steady, get as much information as you can, continue to educate children. So that's where we are.
Can we go back up to letter M on medications real quick? I have a quick question. I'm reading the option, I was reading the options real quick, and the other day, option 1 is checked. Does that include over-the-counter medication? And I don't see it like listed, where option 2, it does list it. Like, you can have over-the-counter in option 2 with a parent, like, waiver signed. I know we do that for like field trips. Like, if you're going to DC, parent signs a waiver and says, yes, if my child needs, Advil, you can give it to them. Or my child needs Benadryl, you can give it to them.
That's a
But I don't see
Well,
that
it looks
option.
like it says prescription only in option 1.
Right,
but it
that's
does
what I
seem to be
mean.
specifying.
That's what I mean. If my child went to the nurse, can they give, if I signed a waiver, could they give them something that they need, like a Benadryl
So
or a?
currently, if you have a waiver, we do administer over-the-counter medication. We do that now. And if you go on
How
a
do you
DC
do it?
trip,
Right, on a DC trip, yes, not in school though.
what's that?
With the parent.
With parent permission, we allow, if they say,
Not over the counter stuff.
we don't right now? That's odd. Let me look at something.
The student is not allowed to take it on their own, is that what you're saying?
Not by the
They can't
nurse.
take it on their own.
They
Not
can take
with-
it on, they have to go to the nurse's office.
Not even with the phone call.
All right, let me check something real quickly here. It's a great observation, because what I want to do, what number is that one?
5330, letter M. It's a
5330.
policy 5330.
So, I'm reading the current policy. I'm gonna pull up this one. Before any, okay, all right, let me go back to this one. Yeah, in our current policy,
Actually, the nurse said she needed a doctor's note.
so right now, our current policy says, this is what policy 5330 says right now. No student is allowed to provide or sell any type of over-the-counter medications to another student. Violations, that's fine. It says, for the purpose of this policy, medications shall include all medications, including those prescribed by a licensed health professional to prescribe drugs and non-prescribed over-the-counter drugs. Is this policy different?
I think it comes down to being in the original container, so like, receivers is end of option 3,
Mm-hmm.
which is over-the-counter drugs must be provided and maintained in the original manufacturer's packaging. So like, if your kid needed Advil, you need to supply the nurse with the full bottle of Advil.
I was saying, for example, if they're having an allergic reaction and needed a Benadryl, how would you know that?
If you wanted your kid to be administered Benadryl, because you knew that was part of the
You have to
safety
wait
plan
until
or
they're having
not.
go into shock and to to come with that EpiPen? Like,
No,
I
They
mean-
would have,
what,
they would have the
what,
full package on file for that student, and then it can be administered by the nurse.
But how would you know they're gonna go into,
well, so through final forms, don't parents fill out the medical information, like if they have any reactions to, like if they have an allergic reaction, and then that's stored within our electronic
Yeah.
database, and then at the beginning of the year, our school nurse creates a list of students who have known allergies and what the response needs to be, and that's communicated to, I think, staff members, bus drivers, because we do that on the first day of school. Here's your high-risk students. But your question is good, and maybe, so, again, I've got to call our attorneys, I always wait until I get a lot of things to talk about with the attorneys.
You can use that as a list.
I do, because I'm not going to call these little one-off, because then I just get charged 15 minutes for a 2-second question, so I want to use my 15 minutes. I will ask specifically about this policy to see if, because we're of the mindset that if the parent gives permission to administer Tylenol,
This has come as original packaging, is,
or if we keep it in
That makes
stock.
sense.
If we keep it in stock, they can have it. I just want to make sure we're connected.
we double check with.
I want to make sure we're selecting the right option.
Yeah.
To answer your question, because if we have the proper documentation, can they take over-the-counter medication with the parent's permission,
Based on the policy.
based on the policy?
So, you know, again, that next line there, outside the options, is where it talks about being in the original manufacturer's packaging. It's highlighted in green, that's new language there.
Yeah, based on the law, that's,
Yeah.
so do you want every student sending in a bottle of Advil for the nurse to hold on to, though?
no, so,
I mean,
well,
just like
again, so the question is, are we, if we have a stock of Tylenol
That's
and
what
you
I
have
mean.
permission to have
Yes,
Tylenol,
exactly.
we can use
Exactly.
our stock, I don't want 50 bottles of Tylenol.
right,
If we have stock, are we selecting the right policy to administer based on the stock that we have?
right.
As opposed to, something else? Because my preference is if we have students who require medication, we should just have that medication on hand. And we have to check it, make sure it hasn't expired, and dispose of them properly. So let me look into this. I want to make sure we have the right options. Thank you. This is 55. Okay, I'm done. Stick a fork in me.
Oh, see if we can figure out where we leave off then here. 19, right? Board discussion and comments? Anyone?
I'm sorry, what was your
I think
ask?
we're in section 19, board discussion and comments.
Okay. I do,
Okay, go ahead.
yes. So, the Valley View Economic Development, Committee met yesterday, and, this is for the grants or incentives that they would, recommend for approval for several businesses in our area. And while I can't give you specifics, like the names of the businesses, because these are recommendations that will then go to the Valley View Village Council for voting on. So but they said I could speak in generalities about it. So one of the major employers in Valley View, this was a project that's been talked about before, an expansion of their business on the other side of Canal Road. The first project that they talked about, a portion of this new build was going to be in Independence, and this was causing delays back and forth with agreements about this grant. So the business came back to the village and said, we've got a Plan B. We have none of the part of this project is going to bleed into Independence. It'll be all in Valley View. And so they came with a proposal. This is working with a $20 million payroll, of which in Valley View, it's a 2% income tax that's paid on that payroll. And they were seeking an EDG, a grant of 25%, so that $100,000 of that yearly payroll will go back to the company. And the committee thought that that was a great idea. They really want this business to stay in Valley View and expand in Valley View. So the committee gave their recommendation for this EDG, this grant, this incentive. A second company in Valley View, it's a pharmacy or pharmaceutical company, and they have an estimated payroll of $27 million. They were seeking, they are already getting a grant, and it is expiring. So they want an extension of their 10-year grant. And they had proposed this grant for the reduction in the income tax to be 35%, and it had been 25%. And the committee recommendation is that they stay at 25%, but for that 10-year extension. Another company involves kind of interesting situation. They're in Sweet Valley, and they have a tenant that they want to bring to their business, but in order for this tenant, they need to make $650,000 in improvements. And so to offset that added expense, they were seeking also an extension of a grant that they had already had. They had also proposed a 35% reduction, and the committee stayed with the 25% for the 10 years. And then the fourth business is a business in Independence, and they're like a warehouse storage business, and they want to consolidate, and they want to move to Valley View, but with this incentive, if to do so with an EDG grant. And they also had proposed 35% for 10 years. And again, the committee decided that 25% reduction over 10 years is what they're recommending. So these four proposals are going to be written up and presented to council for approval. And then when council decides on those things, then I can tell you more specifically which businesses they are. And again, for us as a school board, it doesn't impact the money that we are getting. It may actually just increase the money we're getting, because the money we get is through property taxes. This is what we're talking about is payroll taxes, income tax that goes to the village. But with the understanding that these businesses are getting an incentive to do their projects, expand, and come to the village of Valley View, that will show economic growth. And in turn, that'll benefit us in the long run. So they wanted just to bring that. So there's some things going on in the village that, economic development that could help us in the long run.
Good thing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? I have a couple of items on the Career Center. There's something called the Broadband 5G-NE Node Grant. That CVCC has been awarded $120,000 for the telecommunications tower technician program. So we are going to be building a 60-foot tall tower, as opposed to the 15-foot one that we have indoors currently, where they do basic training. And that 60-foot tower is going to be outside, and GPD is working along with this project to make sure that the city of Brecksville approvals are all taken care of. They expect that to be in place by the end of June. There also is a proposal, so to speak, to move the All Boards Dinner, which is normally in October. I want to move it to April. I don't remember the exact date. I don't have it in front of me at the moment.
2026.
So we're going to move the All Boards Dinner to April 23rd, and the reason for that is that's the date of the grand opening of the construction labs and cosmetology labs.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
So that will allow everybody to be part of that grand opening and tour the areas and so on. So you might want to put a note on your calendar for that one. And those are the two significant things that have shown up since our last meeting.
I just wanted to do a reminder about the regional OSBA conference that's going to be at Cuyahoga Valley
Right.
Career Center on February 25th, is it? Oh, gosh. Why don't I see
Because I
the
sent
date?
you,
This is in the
Oh,
subject line.
yeah, we've gotten a couple of emails on that one,
Yeah,
I
right
think.
Yeah, we just,
Yeah.
did we just approve?
yeah. I know we approved it at the last meeting, but
Just
it
a-
would, just
Today,
as a
yeah.
reminder,
Just a reminder to be there. Do we need
I need to RSVP.
do we need an agenda item for that? Because that'll be
We approved it today.
You approved it tonight.
that's the one we approved tonight, right? Yes.
We do need to RSVP. Who all is going or planning?
Sorry, I can't make that night.
I was going to RSVP myself unless you want to
Okay.
RSVP for me. I mean, I'll do it. I
Yeah,
mean,
if you guys,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
if you guys have any problems,
are you
Matt or
guys
myself
also
know.
planning on coming to this? Or I don't know, if the
Tuesday.
invitation.
I
It's
don't know
for
if we're
board members.
invited.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, I
for
think
Might
board
just be
members.
for board members only.
Yeah.
Yeah.
what food are they having?
Actually, it says light refreshments, salad, pizza, chicken, and cookies.
That doesn't sound light to me.
Sounds sufficient for me.
It's light for Reno, I guess. Because he signed his name right after that, so.
Well, if anybody needs any help RSVPing, just let us know, but
Okay.
we'll just let.
Yeah, that's a
everybody know.
Tuesday evening.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, any other discussion items? If none, we'll move on to future agenda items. I see heads nodding negatively, so we'll move on to informational items. Should be noted, Board of Education members receive their agenda several days prior to the actual meeting and have opportunity to study and ask questions and so on. Upcoming regular meetings, Wednesday, February 26th at 7, March 12th at 6, and March 26th at 7. If there's no other business to come before the board, I'll accept a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Oh, well, thank you, Ms. Decker.
Second.
And Mrs. Etter, you have seconded appropriately. Will the treasurer please call the roll?
Mrs. Decker,
Aye.
Mrs. Etter,
Aye.
Ms. Kraus.
Aye.
Mr. Souchaki.
Aye, motion passes 4-0. We are adjourned. It is 8:07 PM. Thank you, everyone.
We did it.
Not so bad after all.
So many tabs open from trying to keep up with all the things we talk about.
Close this baby. Turn.
I never got a chance around to closing
I
any
know.
of them.
Yep.
Me too.
I don't normally do that. I usually keep things a lot neater. It is getting hard for me to see.
I know, I gotta bring my glasses next time. It's not very, I want to adjust the brightness and I don't know how to.
I don't know what it is.